Welcome to another best free hit team video ahead of Double Gameweek 37. This is going to be slightly different to my normal best free hit team videos because I've actually activated my free hit chip already. I'm going to be using it this week and I'm going to show you my team at the very end of this video. How I'm going to structure it is talk about two different teams first and discuss different options, highlight them, and try to spot trends between all of the free drafts you're going to see. And the free drafts does include my final team at the end. So then I can provide you the kind of best options, narrow it down. So for example, there's 5 good goalkeeper options this week. I'll narrow it down to 2, then it's down to your personal preference, and I'll do that throughout the rest of my team. So let's get straight into this. Let's get this video to 150 likes and let's get to 11,000 subscribers. It really helps out with the channel, so share this video around with anyone who loves FPL and also my UCL fantasy content and F1 fantasy. It's all much appreciated. But before we begin and get into the first team, I want to highlight the fixtures. So we actually have a Sunday deadline as opposed to the typical Saturday and Friday, and it's also going to be slightly earlier. So it's going to be 10:30 a.m. on the Sunday. Typically it's at 11 a.m. on a Saturday, so bear that in mind. We've got a very early kickoff between Spurs and Burnley, and I want to highlight the 4 teams that are doubling, which include Burnley, Everton, Crystal Palace and Aston Villa. Now I just want to quickly say which one I rank in terms of the fixtures and who I think have the best ones. I think Aston Villa have the best double. They've got 2 home fixtures against Crystal Palace and Burnley, and Everton also have a double at home, Brentford at home and Crystal Palace at home. Who do I prefer? I think Aston Villa, like I said before, because Brentford is a tougher game than Burnley in my opinion. And then after Everton, who I would say are the second best in terms of the doublers who have the best fixtures, I would put Crystal Palace in 3rd place. They've got 2 away games at Everton and also at Aston Villa. And then finally Burnley, who face Spurs, who are in form, and they also face Aston Villa, who they just lost 3-1 to at home. So I would rank them in that way. Aston Villa 1st, Everton 2nd, Crystal Palace 3rd and Burnley 4th. Let me know if you would change anything in that order. Maybe you'd put Everton above Aston Villa, which is fair enough. And also Everton have more to fight for. You also have to maybe factor that into your thinking. But in terms of pure fixtures, I think Aston Villa are the best. A few other fixtures to kind of highlight include Spurs versus Burnley. I think Kane, Son, Kulusevski could do very well in that fixture. And then you're looking at a few others. So potentially Liverpool away to Southampton. I think that's a really good fixture. The Saints are in awful form and you'd expect Liverpool to easily win that game. So the defenders offer great value as well as their attackers, potentially Mohamed Salah as well as a single game week captaincy option. Although I would want to go a bit different with the captaincy in this week, as we'll discuss throughout the video. But that's kind of a brief rundown of the fixtures. Let me know what you think. And now let's get into the first team. On a free hit, I would highly advise not to go really big with your bench. Having 1 or 2 decent options is fine, but don't go with very expensive players like Cancelo on your bench. I don't think that makes any sense, and you want to invest all of your money into your starting 11. So ignore Steele. He's just a backup goalkeeper to facilitate your main goalkeeper. And I've gone for Martinez. I think in isolation, he is the best goalkeeper in Game Week 37. And the other one that is really close is Jordan Pickford. There's a few others that are in contention like Gaeta, Nick Pope, and also Kasper Schmeichel. But I think the top 2 options are between Martinez and Pickford, as we'll discuss throughout all of these drafts. Let me know who you prefer out of those 2. But then what you could also argue is that you would rather have Pickford to cover Everton defence, and instead of Martinez you can go for Cash or Luca Dean, or maybe even have both of them, as we'll discuss very soon. So I will go for Martinez and Steele as the 2 goalkeepers here, and now let's see what the defenders are. We're doubling up on Aston Villa defence with Matty Cash. Now, a lot of people are leaning more towards Luca Dean at the moment due to recent performances, and maybe because I've been burned by him in the past, I've got a bit of a bias here, but I actually prefer Matty Cash. If you had to pick one defensive coverage from Aston Villa, I would go for Matty Cash over Luca Dean. Let me know what you think about that kind of 50-50 decision. It could ultimately lead to a huge variance, a key term throughout this whole season. And I've gone for Mykolenko. I think he's the best Everton defender. There's also Holgate and of course Pickford as defensive coverage. But Mykolenko's getting bonus points, some attacking returns, and he's been doing pretty well recently. He's at a good price as well. Now I've gone for Joao Cancelo. I like Manchester City defence a lot, but Diaz, Stones and Walker are out for the entire season, and that's a huge blow for Manchester City. And they're facing West Ham, which is a pretty difficult fixture. Even though I back Manchester City to win that, they could slip up and they might still concede the odd goal, even if they get that all-important victory for the title. So let me know if you're going to go for a Manchester City defender on a free hit. And despite my confidence in the citizens, I don't think I double up on their defence at all in this week. And I've gone for Tsimikas as a 5th defender. He might even start against Southampton, especially if Robertson plays against Aston Villa and in the FA Cup final. But what I'm expecting to happen is Tsimikas actually starts against Aston Villa in the second game of 36, and then Robertson plays the FA Cup final, and then he might play again against Southampton. So that's going to be interesting to see, but he's just there to sit on the bench. I'm going to show you how this team looks like in FPL.team. The final defender, and another 50-50 decision for you to make, is Timothy Castagna. Do you want to go for him or maybe James Justin? I think those are the two best defenders for Leicester, but I just dislike Brendan Rodgers' rotation policy very, very much, and I actually prefer Kasper Schmeichel to cover Leicester defence. So that's kind of my thinking there, but ultimately I don't think this is the best 5 necessarily on a free hit. This is just one draft talking about different options like Castagna, who ultimately don't make the final cut in my own personal team at the moment. Out of all the drafts, I think this has the strongest midfield. We've got De Bruyne, Zaha, Salah and Son. We've also got Gordon, but he would be sitting on the bench as well. What I would say is that this midfield is lacking the double gameweek options. Only Gordon and Zaha are there. You could arguably start Gordon, but I don't think I would do so over the likes of De Bruyne, Salah, Son, or even the defenders we discussed before, and I'm going to show you very soon. But let me know what you think. I think Salah and Son are the best single gameweek options in this week. Like I said with Manchester City before, I just don't really expect them to win by a huge margin against West Ham, although I backed them to get the victory. So De Bruyne might not be the best option in this team. You could arguably go for Sadio Mane instead, but I wouldn't go for Salah and Sadio Mane against Southampton, although that's not a bad shout to be fair. Sadio Mane doesn't have the greatest record against his former club, but he might feature in another draft that we'll discuss very soon. And Zaha for me is the best double gameweek option in the midfield. I think he's a fantastic option. Yes, 2 away games, but he's on penalties, and he is definitely their best asset in general. He's better than Gallagher, who in the last 10 games, I don't know what's happened to him, but nowhere near what he showed in the first half of the season, FPL wise. And I just don't trust Mateta and Edouard to start both games. So therefore Zaha is an easy player to go to, apart from their defenders like Mitchell, Gay, who is injured at the moment, and also Anderson, as well as Gaeta in goal. I think Zaha is the undisputed best player for Crystal Palace, and even a good captaincy option this week. To conclude this team, we have another bench fodder option in Greenwood, but then we have Richarlison and Watkins starting, and I think Richarlison is arguably one of the best captaincy options this week. Now, I'm not a huge fan of Richarlison or Everton, but 2 home games, Richarlison is in good form, and I honestly would say his double is not too far off Watkins, and I prefer Richarlison right now, although their stats are very similar over the course of the season. Ollie Watkins or Danny Ings is an interesting debate. I actually prefer Danny Ings as a player. I think he's a better finisher, but the underlying numbers are definitely in Watkins' favour, and also I would back Watkins to get more minutes across the double than Danny Ings, who's also injury prone. Let me know who you prefer from that other 50-50 decision. Iheanacho's another striker that's not going to feature in any of these drafts that is worth considering, but kind of like all the Leicester players, I just don't really trust any of them apart from Schmeichel to start both games in this double gameweek. So now let me show you how this team would look like in FPL.team and who would be on the bench, etc. before going on to the next draft, and then finally my team selection. As you can see, Martinez would be in goal with Mati, Cash, Castagna, Cancelo and Mikalenko. That's a pretty solid backline, and like I said before, I think this is the best midfield possible, at least from the single gameweek options at your disposal, with Salah, Son, De Bruyne and Wilfred Zaha. And then up front we've gone for Richarlison and Watkins, and as you can see, Richarlison is the captain with Son as the vice. That could easily be Zaha as well. And are there any other players that I'd consider? Maybe even Mati Cash as a cheeky punt, or Ollie Watkins, but I just don't trust Watkins enough to go for him in terms of the captaincy. And the bench is decent. Remember, you don't need a great bench. It doesn't really play a huge part, because if you're stacking your team up with double gameweek players, they're probably going to play one of these games unless they're injured and miss out entirely. But someone like Gordon is enough to come off your bench. You don't need to have Cancelo on the bench, or maybe even Trent or Robertson. It doesn't make any sense to me. Even Bukayo Saka, for example. So you want to fill your team, or your bench should I say, with cheap options in order to give you as much money as possible for your starting 11. Gordon as the first sub is fine enough. Then we've also got Tsimikas and then Greenwood. So I think there's a solid draft. Not the best one maybe, and that's why I've gone for something else with my own team selection. But before I do that, like I said already, I will show you another draft where we talk about some different players, and this is going to be the kind of, let's say, the bravest and boldest team selection and free hit draft of them all. While Schmeichel has scored more points than Pickford over the course of the season, the England international has actually been far better, especially in the last 2 games. So I would personally go for Pickford over Schmeichel, but this is another goalkeeper to consider, and I think I would rank Schmeichel as the 3rd or 4th best goalkeeper this week, and I think I'd put him just about over the likes of Nick Pope and Gaeta, but it's very close between those 3, and like I said already, for me, Pickford and Martinez are the best goalkeepers this week, with Martinez potentially being number 1, although you would prefer having the Aston Villa defenders, or their fullback should I say. So Steele once again as the 2nd goalkeeper, not much has changed there, but I've gone for Kasper Schmeichel to show you, in my opinion, the 3 best goalkeepers across these 3 different drafts. Now let's show you the defence, which is going to be slightly different to the first one. Instead of Mykolenko, we've gone for Holgate, who is only 4.2 million. He's a bargain at the moment. I would prefer Mykolenko, and I think he justifies that extra 0.7 million. But Holgate is a very good enabler nonetheless. Then we've gone for Luka Dean instead of Matty Cash. Like I already made my feelings clear, I think Cash is slightly better, especially over the course of the season, and is more explosive. And I think in terms of goals, Cash is more likely to get them, but in terms of creativity, the crosses, and the expected assists, Dean would trump him in all of those aspects. Then we've gone for Tyreek Mitchell. Now another one you could consider is Anderson, and it's just a shame that Gay is injured at the moment and he is flagged ahead of Double Gameweek 37. Otherwise, he's another one to consider, so let's keep an eye on that situation. Tsimikas is there once again as an enabler, and we've gone for Trent Alexander-Arnold this time. I think either fullback, Trent or Robertson, is worth it, but let's see what happens against Aston Villa. Will Tsimikas or Robertson start? That will be very interesting. So this is the back five in this draft. Quite different, maybe not the best one or everyone's cup of tea, but still a very solid defence nonetheless. This is a very different looking draft, especially in terms of the midfield. We've gone for Maddison. Now, I really like him. I think he's the best Leicester asset, in my opinion, at least from the outfield players. My problem with him is his minutes. They're always managed, and he's been having some injury issues lately, and that's why in the last 2 Premier League games, he didn't feature in the entire squad. So keep an eye on his fitness. Let's see what happens. But ultimately, that Watford game is where I'd expect Maddison to go big. And even against Chelsea, he's done it even last season. He can go big against them as well. So Maddison always has that potential to explode in the double game week. The problem is, will he get those minutes? And even if he's fit, will he play both games? That's going to be a huge cause for concern. I've gone for Zaha again. He pretty much features in all of these drafts. I think you have to go for him pretty much. Same goes for Heung-min Son. But Sadio Mane, I don't like his record against Southampton necessarily, but what I do like is his form, and he's got a great chance of competing for the Ballon d'Or. However, if he starts against Aston Villa and in the FA Cup final, he could be benched against Southampton because Liverpool have so many options at their disposal in those attacking positions. And then Trossard, he's, in my opinion, probably the most informed player in the Premier League right now. He got 17 points against Manchester United. He scored against Tottenham and Arsenal. He's just scoring every single time he plays at the moment, and I think he's a great option. He also has those assists. He got 2 assists against United, and that's how he accumulated all those points. So for me, Trossard is a fantastic option. Would I go for him in my starting 11? Probably not, but I want to highlight him because he's worth considering, and not many people will discuss him this week, I believe. Now let's go on to the forward line, which is also going to be very different, at least in one department. To conclude this team, we have Danny Ings instead of Ollie Watkins. And I actually prefer Danny Ings as a player and as a finisher, but his underlying numbers aren't as good as Watkins, and I'm more concerned about his minutes. And that's kind of a reoccurring theme throughout this entire squad. The likes of Maddison, Vardy, Ings, and a few others, like even Sadio Mane potentially, you would maybe have a few concerns about their minutes. We've gone for Richarlison again. He's featuring in all of these drafts, just like Zaha and Heung-min Son. And Jamie Vardy could be your differential captaincy option. So let me show you how this team looks like in FPL.team. And just for those of you that are wondering, the first team cost 103.2 million for me, and this team, Team 2, costs 102.9 million, so it's slightly cheaper. And the final team, the one that I currently have, is actually the cheapest of them all. So let's go into FPL.team right now. Kasper Schmeichel will be in goal with Holgate, Trent and Dean as the back line. You could even put Mitchell in there for Holgate. Let me know who you would prefer. We've gone for Maddison, Mane, Son and Zaha. This midfield rivals the first draft with De Bruyne instead of Mane, so both very similar level. And then we've got Vardy as the captain. If you're looking to gain rank, this could be the draft for you. But I would just urge a bit of caution because you've got a lot of rotation risks in here, like Maddison and Vardy. I just don't know if they're going to play both games. You've got Danny Ings and Richarlison there as well, with Trossard, Mitchell and Tsimikas on the bench. So this has arguably more squad depth, but remember, you don't need that much on a free hit. And Vardy, as much as I like him as a player, he's constantly been injured this season, so I'd be very worried about him, and I don't think I'd go for him in the end, unfortunately. If he was fit throughout the whole season or didn't get so many injuries, then I think he would be a locked-in player for this free hit. I really like him for that Watford fixture, and even against Chelsea. Now let me show you my current team selection. Let me know what you think, and if you've got any suggestions, feel free to comment them down in the comment section below. I'm currently going for Pickford in goal, although I think Martinez is a better option. I'm covering Aston Villa with Luka Dean and Matty Cash. Maybe I haven't learned my lesson because Luka Dean constantly burns me really in FPL. I've never gotten a return from him, I believe. Maybe 1 or 2 out of like 10 or 15 game weeks across 2 or 3 years. I've gone for Robertson there as well instead of Trent just for that extra money. And Anderson is there as the Crystal Palace defender. Although you could argue the other defences and the other teams were slightly better than this one. And I think that is something that I could look to change. Maybe Martinez would come in goal with Mykolenko taking Luka Dean's place, and possibly Anderson isn't the greatest option, but I just wouldn't be too sure about Everton and doubling up on their defence instead. With the midfield, I've only gone for 3 this time, with Salah and Son, as well as Wilfried Zaha, who I think is fairly locked into this team. Salah could actually make way, and I could get a 4th midfielder as well, but I'm just not too sure whether it'd be Trossard. Maybe I go for Maddison. I just don't back the minutes for Maddison, and Trossard only has 1 game, and would I really go for him over one of these forwards or one of the defenders? I'm just not too sure. Richarlison is in here once again, and he's my captain, with Son as my vice, and I've gone for Harry Kane actually. Against Burnley at home, I think he could do very well, but you may argue that I should just go for a double game week striker instead, or just go for a double game week midfielder and dead end that 3rd striker position. Ollie Watkins is also in here, and Gordon, Brownhill and Tsimikas all make my bench, so decent squad depth, not the best. I'd say the second team had the best squad depth of all of them, but this is a pretty decent squad overall, and in my opinion currently it is the best free hit team, although I think a few kind of question marks I have involve Anderson. I'm just not too sure if he should feature in my starting 11, but I'm very confident about the rest of my picks. And once again, just to kind of reiterate this, so the first team I showed you cost 103.2 million, the last team I just showed you, so team 2, cost 102.9 million, and this one costs 102.1 million. So I've got plenty in the bank. I think I've got 1.2 million at my disposal. Which changes would you make? I'd be very interested to see your thoughts. And if you are playing the free hit, which players do you currently have and who are you captaining? I'd be very interested to see, even those of you going without the free hit. I've seen some of you still with a wild card in your back pocket. Let me know your thoughts about Double Gameweek 37. And if you enjoyed this video, smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. There's still going to be a team selection video later this week, and I'm going to talk about any changes I may make from this draft. I'll talk about my Gameweek 36 performance. Hopefully it's much better. As you can see, I currently have 40 points with the -4 taken into account, and I've got a small red arrow from 19k to 22k. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, as well as becoming a Patreon or channel member. Check the description below for all the list of perks, such as exclusive early access to all my videos if you sign up, even as a differential, the cheapest tier available to you. All the best of luck for Double Gameweek 36. Still plenty of games left for that, as well as Double Gameweek 37. It's going to be very interesting with that Sunday deadline at hand, and all the best of luck. Hopefully you enjoy the football. That's the most important thing, and I'll see you next time.